everyone, welcome back to Dragalia Lost. So we are here once again for another Dominion guide, this time featuring Ann from the Persona 5 series in a total new guide about her that we already covered one in the past, so if you want a more in-depth analysis for Ann in general, you could go check that out. This one will be a guide about her in the Jaldabaoth fight, and so we will explore in her kit what gets affected by Nihility, then the build that I used, it is the one that I used in the past, the Dreadking Rathalos one based on her Force Strikes, and then of course the other options that you would use. The best one is of course the one with her normal attacks build, the one with Reborn Agni, which I don't have, and so I had to fall back to my old build, which still is pretty fun in my opinion. As usual, the guide will go through the fight guide, then we go into looking at her kit behind Nihility, so not the usual analysis that we do. Then we look at the build, Wyrmprints, dragons, etc. and some other options for it, and then the video is over. Hopefully this will help with your own setup, build, etc. if you lack the standard requirement for the normal attack build, and maybe if you have a Dreadking Rathalos that you want to use, this is a pretty good option in my opinion. But let's not waste any more words, hopefully you will enjoy the guide. Let's jump straight into the fight against Expert Jaldabaoth, which is a very good attempt to showcase my build with Ann. I think it was pretty fun all in all. Hopefully you will enjoy it. So let's go. Panther versus Expert Jaldabaoth co-op. For this particular attempt we had myself as a Panther, 2 Galeonidas and 1 Halloween Lowen. In this particular fight you want to focus on getting your skills and your persona ready as quick as possible by using Force Strike. As you can see over here, I lined up the Pino, Nad and Gabriel just so my Force Strike would bypass the both of them. Indeed, you can bypass the enemy with the Force Strike, so it is very good if you line up multiple enemies, as you will see later on in the demon phase. The skills give Ann some relevant buff, but since Nihility is there, those buffs will get denied. Indeed, the main usage for the skills over here is to deal damage and to inflict Scorch Hand, which should be your priority. As you can see over here, whenever the boss is about to do an unavoidable skill, you don't want to charge up the Force Strike, because by the time the boss completes his skill, you will get knocked down, which isn't very helpful whenever you want to have a constant DPS. Use Force Strike whenever you are in a position that you aren't about to get moved, since Ann, unlike the rapid fire mana casters, cannot move whenever she uses her Force Strike. About her persona, you want to save up the persona for the demon phase because of how RS2 works. RS2, every time it dispels a buff from the enemy, it gives a debuff on the flame damage taken, which is very helpful because Ann cannot transform into Godzuden or similar dragons to trigger that effect. So now we enter the demon phase. Over here there will be a more priority in destroying the adds, but as you saw earlier, it is not too much of a problem. You want to use either Force Strike or normal attacks against the adds. Usually Force Strikes works better in this build, but you need to line them up. You can get knocked down, which isn't very helpful. Against the boss itself, you want to inflict a Scorch Hand and then make sure to use the persona whenever you can to exploit the extra damage that you can do. You have to remember always that the boss summons the big adds, and against the big adds, Ann has a slight weakness in the fact that she does not have access to a dragon, and so that means that her damage will be a little bit slower, but still good enough, as you can see over here. Especially if you manage to line up the big ad with the other ads and then you go into Force Strike, it will be quite helpful. As you can see, the Tarunda, which is the upgraded S2, also affects all the adds that are in the fight. So if you use it and the adds are also buffed, you will trigger the death, not the death down, but the flame resistance down debuff, which is very helpful. Other than that, my opinion in Ann in this fight is that you really want to spam skills for strike, spam skills, etc. Works very well in my opinion. I dealt a ton of damage and the break bar went down, also thanks to the fact that we had the Galeonidas in the team. Also, if you have a good support, in this case this Halloween Lowen gave me the Yukata Cassandra buff, which is pretty helpful as you can tell for a Force Strike build. If you do not have a Yukata Cassandra skill share, or if you have it, make sure to have someone else equip it because it really helps with an Ann Force Strike build. As you can see over here, I lined up the summoning circle and the orb for this phase. It helped a lot. I smashed throughout that orb like it was nothing. I will redo it during this phase. It is probably the best way to use this build that I found, and it was quite effective in my opinion. A really good showing for the Dreadking Rathalos build. I really like it, even though it might be not be so optimal because the normal attacks build is better, but it is a lot of fun. As you can see, it works, but maybe you would say that it is because of the two Galalionidas. I partly agree, but remember that I am the one doing the dispels because of the Galanot skill share and the S2, so I do think that it's doing some work at least. Other than that, what do I want to add about Ann? Well, my general concern for this particular build will be that you really learn when and when not to Force Strike, because Ann cannot move, so you want to make sure that you are in a position where the boss either does not move a lot, which happens a lot in this fight as you can see, or where, for example, you aren't about to get targeted by the beam, an ad is not about to come towards you, this type of stuff. If you are safe, as you can see in doing this attempt that I did, you get a lot of timing to get your Force Strike damage out, which is very essential. The skills get charged at a very rapid rate. As you can see, I probably fired maybe around 20 Darundas during the demon phase, and those help a lot because the strength down debuff that Ann applies plus the flame resistance that you get whenever you dispel the boss are very helpful for your overall team. Always remember to focus on the ads whenever you can, since you are one of the best ways to deal with them, especially with the S1. And as you can see right here, we do the summoning circle trick again. It works really wonderfully in my opinion. I do think that probably with the Reborn Agni it will be even better, but this build showcase is probably one of my best one in terms of the fight attempts. Hopefully you see why. I really do think that I did a really good job over here. Since it's not a very easy build to play in my opinion. It takes some decision making on the spot, which can be quite hard if you don't know how the build for Ann works. So let's find out. Let's go into analyzing the Ann kit in Nihility and then showcasing my build. Hopefully you enjoyed the fight. So here we are at the barracks. As I told you earlier, we will look at Ann's kit and how it gets affected by Nihility, what gets denied, and what you should do with any Ann build that you decide to make. As I told you earlier, this will be mostly a video around my build rather than the best build for Panther, but I will tell you what the best build will be, my general knowledge about the game. We will go into my build after that and see what I used. You can partly see a preview over here. And then the alternatives for some stuff, but I do believe that this build is pretty much on point on what you want to use, but maybe some people will change what I think, and I like to get feedback, so I don't mind too much. So, Ann is a unit that relies a lot on her standard attacks and Force Strike to deal out damage. Why? Because her two skills don't really deal too much damage, like you have an 800 modifier and S1, which gives her a good amount of persona energy and also 2 buffs. Those 2 buffs unfortunately get denied by Nihility, so you can forget about the Snipe and the Fire Boost, which is very unfortunate because those two are very powerful buff for the short duration. If you use my build, which is the Dreadking Rathalos 1, this skill will charge up in basically 2 seconds, so you can spam it, which is quite helpful because it is very good in dealing with ads, especially if you crit or if you are buffed from some Wyrmprints. So in my opinion, it is very good in that part. It is also extra damage, which doesn't take away from your overall damage in my opinion, particularly in an Nihility fight, so it is quite worthwhile. Whenever Carmen is active, this becomes a small nuke if the enemy is Scorch Rent, which is quite helpful, especially if you have 2 Galalionidas on the team who can also inflict Scorch Rent. I do believe that Scorch Rent is a pillar for any Ann build that you do, so having an run alongside a Galalionidas, a Kimono Elisan, a Seimei, etc. will be very helpful also for your overall performance, especially with a normal attack build. With a Force Strike one, I guess it is also essential, but you can inflict Scorch Render yourself. Then we have the second skill, which is Field Hit. This is the one that inflicts Scorch and way better damage, way higher skill energy required, but inflicting Scorch Rend, as you saw, is quite essential both for your team and for yourself. So just before we get into the whole skill, remember that her passive, which is the Scorch Rend Flame Damage 2, also gets denied by Nihility, so you can't stack this up and gain a ton of damage. while this might seem very bad for her, it doesn't really affect her overall performance. Why? Well, because if she gets denied those buffs, a ton of unit also gets denied a lot of other buffs. So overall, between all the units that get sort of nerfed, she is the less, let's say, overall performance that gets worse. She's still good because of her standard attacks and or force strike in whatever option you decide to run your build for. So getting back to the second skill, this skill should be used to inflict a Scorch Hand, or whenever the boss is buffed, you want to activate Carment if available and debuff the boss. As I told you earlier, the debuff will give a flame res minus 5% if you dispel the buff, and also a strength minus 20%. It is very helpful in my opinion. The second, the special Persona S2 also is away, so it will deal with all the ads that are on screen. It is also quite strong. Of course, don't expect crazy modifiers, but with the fact that you can spam those two skills thanks to the Force Strike build, in my opinion, it is very worthwhile to use them. I think that I can safely say that the standard attacks one is better. How would the standard attack one work? Well, same as the Force Strike one, you basically use standard attacks to deal both with the ads and the boss. You do not want to use the S1 if not to deal with multiple ads, because it kinda takes away from the overall damage of the standard attacks, but you want to use the S2 to inflict a Scorch Hand or the S2 to dispel the boss. The S1 you will use it only whenever you are in Persona mode to deal the extra damage with the nuke. The Wildfire itself, I don't believe it's too worth it with the standard attack build. With the Force Strike one, yes, because you charge it up very quickly, so it is a way better alternative. For her Scorch Hand boost and Flame Dancer, they don't get affected. The passive, as I told you, Scorch Hand Flame Damage does get affected. Dancing Panther does not get affected, but it is only the passive to give her a persona, so it makes a lot of sense that it doesn't. Overall, her kit is kinda affected by Nihility, but not in a way where she is unplayable. So overall, I would say that Panther is a very worthwhile unit for this fight. She's very good in dealing with ads, she's very good in dealing damage to the boss, especially with a very simple build. However, I will say that it requires a ton of limited stuff, especially herself, she's limited. So you will need to be maybe a top tier player, a whale or a veteran to bring out her true damage. I'm not a whale, so I don't have Reborn Agni, and that's why my build is all about Dreadking Rathalos. So now we jump into the build. We will see my Wyrmprints first, then the dragons, alternatives to the Dreadking Rathalos, and then we jump into, of course, the abilities and the skill shares for my particular build. So to start with the Wyrmprints, to the surprise of no one, you will see a ton of Force Strike stuff, but as I told you, not really a huge surprise. I tried to implement the extra Wyrmprint slots, but as usual, I am still farming for them. There is a ton of options, and I still need to decide what to prioritize. I do suggest that you get the stuff that supports Force Strike, so the Fork Seal, the Lance Boon, I believe it is called, because the more Force Strike damage that you do, the better DPS overall. So let's start with the obvious. Scorch and Punisher. This is, I believe, a limited print, so if you don't have it, I do suggest that you run something else that might be on the same length, maybe Burning Punisher. This is, however, very essential for any Ann build, so I would recommend to have it if you plan to use this particular build. In the standard attack one, it is probably even more required. Then we have Memory of a Friend. Any Flurry Strength Wyrmprint would work, but you want this one because it is the coolest one, and it has the Lance Boon, of course. Then we have the Lurker in the Woods. This is just a Force Strike print, for obvious reason, because any extra Force Strike damage is very good. Flurry Devastation. This is to increase your critical rate, which is very helpful in a Force Strike build because there are a ton of hits, and the more crits that you do, the better. Then we have skill damage plus 20% because I can pair it up with the Dominion Print. If I had a fully activated Dominion Print, this would have been 40%, but I am getting there. I believe this week I could get this one to full unbind. Last but not least, even more crit rate. I believe this one could have a better Dominion Print, but right now I have nothing else better, so it is what it is. So, what is the alternative with the standard attack build? Well, you replace Force Strike with Burning Punisher. Burning Punisher should be down here. Let me check it out. And let's see, there we go. Over here, so you get Burning Punisher, either me and my bestie or the Valentine one of those two, and that's your standard attack build. You could replace the Flurry Devastation with the critical damage. Maybe it is a little bit better because In general, critical damage can be way more helpful in this case, but I prefer for my build to rely on critical rate because, as you saw, there are a ton of hits. More hits means more chances to crit. More chances to crit with a better chance to crit means that you crit more. I would have loved to have a slot for critical damage, but this build is as full as it is currently. Let me know what you think about my Wyrmprint setup, if I could improve something, your own ideas, etc. I do believe that this one is quite good, however, I think it is a very straightforward Force Strike Dreadking Rathalos build. So let's get to the dragons. Well, the dragons, very simply, this is a Dreadking Rathalos build, so there is no other options for this build other than Dreadking Rathalos, but I will give you some alternatives based on what this build is all about, which is Force Strike. So why Dreadking Rathalos? Because of course, more strength, more Force Strike damage, but most of all, whenever you use the Force Strike, you increase your skill gauge appeal rate by 30% when the user Force Strike connects. This works with Ann, we tested it the last time. It is very helpful to increase your skill, let's say, pattern, increase your skill damage overall, and bring out that Scorcher Hand, those buffs, and those debuffs whenever you can. Overall, she's one of the best users for Dreadking Rathalos, together with, I believe, Yashio, and maybe even Leonidas, but I'm not even sure about that one, because he's way better with Godsudenno, if I had to choose. So, alternatives to Dreadking Rathalos. Well, Godsudenno is a very obvious one. Why did I not use Godsudenno? Well, because I do believe that while his buff is way more important overall and it gives her a more solid edge, I do like the Dreadking Rathalos skill spam way more to kill the odds, because Godsudenno will focus all around always using the Force Strike, and then whenever you are not using it, to go in standard attacks, which is basically the standard attack build. So I didn't want the two to overlap and make a clear distinction from that build. But of course, it is a very solid second alternative to Dreadking Rathalos. Third alternative would be any strength dragon, even Mars will work over here, because strength is raw damage and you want to get that strength into the Force Strike and or your normal attacks. Of course, let me say this, I am not considering Reborn Agni, for the sole reason that if you have Reborn Agni, you wouldn't want to get a Force Strike build. Reborn Agni works in both builds, but if you have him, you wouldn't run this build, you would run the standard attack one. So for Reborn Agni, I will put something on the left in my infographic saying basically, if you have Reborn Agni, run the standard attack build. It is way more damage, is way more efficient in there, and in general a way better dragon for many reasons. So overall, this is the sort of dragon choice that you are given. But if I had to rank him, Reborn Agni, Dreadking Rathalos, Godsudenno for this build. For the standard attack build, Reborn Agni, Godsudenno, all the other dragons. This is mainly what you want. I don't really like the idea, however, of the standard attack build with Godsudenno, which is why I don't run it. Like, Force Strike for 3 seconds, then attack, then you have to refresh, etc. It's a very boring way to play for me, so I decided to skip it. Next, we have the co-abilities and the skill shares. So we will start with the co-abilities. So, pretty obvious who I wanted to go with. We have Grace for the Force Strike buff. This is something that you cannot replace, in my opinion, because she is meant to be here for a reason. We have Nobunaga for the strength and the combo time. Very helpful in this fight, especially if you need to reset the Force Strike due to positioning. Then we have Incognito Nefaria for the skill damage, another obvious pick. What are some replacements? Well, if you really want to be on the edge, you could replace Nobunaga with Ezelit, but then you don't have the strength, which in my opinion is way better, but Nobunaga is limited, so I can understand if you want to replace her if you don't have her. For Incognito Nefaria, well, any other one will do. In my opinion, those are two abilities that you really want for this build, so I don't really see why you will get anything else. Now, for the standard attack build, you will go with probably Nobunaga always here or Ezelit. Then, instead of Grace, you will get, I believe, Galalaxy. Sorry, I'm not really sure why I hesitated there with the Galalaxy and Ortigi for the standard attack damage. And instead of Incognito Nefaria, probably you will get a Dagger. Which is why maybe it will be best if you got Ezelit over here and then over here a Blade. But having Nobunaga makes it so that you have more versatility in what to choose. Those are the standard attack option. I won't use the infographic to give you guys info about the standard attack since it doesn't really make sense to me, but hopefully you remember it by what I said in voice. I know that some of you have an hard time understanding me, but hopefully it's not too much of a problem. For skill shares, remember that the Aikido weapon isn't really recommended due to the fact that this one does not have an attacking skill, much like we did with Irene, where she had at least an attacking skill to fill up her Dragon Gauche, so you want to not use the Aikido skill weapon and focus on other stuff. What do I suggest? Well, first place will be Dispels, Galanot, the normal Ranzal Dispel, Lapis, anything else that goes that can dispel is very helpful in this fight. As you saw, especially if you don't have access to Tarunda, it is essential that you are pure allies, especially if you are the Dispeller, which I was in this case. Second place will go for any overdamage skill share, so Yukata Cassandra or the Lily one, the Dragon New Lily. Yukata Cassandra has the best one because of her Spiral, but if you don't have her and you have Lily, it works all the same. Third place will go for any dragon-based skill, so Humanoid Mercury, Galamim, the Prince, etc., to give her a better time into the Persona mode since it helps her a lot in DPS. And then we go into the usual standard skill share abilities, so buffs, sorry, not buffs, healing, standard damage, afflictions, etc. Scorched Hand will be the best one to have, so what was it that had the Scorched Hand? I believe the Elisan skill share, the Seimei skill share, anything that can inflict Scorched Hand helps her a lot. So those are the options for the skill shares. Hopefully you have one of them. The Galanot one, as you saw, is probably one of the best because it is AoE, it dispels, and the attack persists, so it deals plenty of damage. It also chases the enemy around, which helps a lot in my opinion. It really does. Okay, so this is it for the build. Hopefully you enjoyed this sort of renewed look at Panther. I really like the Persona cast, so I wanted to give her a second chance in this boss, and I found her very fun to play. You know that I promised you guys a Nobunaga build showcase. I have a video for it, don't worry, I just need to get around it. I didn't want to do back-to-back Nobunaga builds, so we'll get into Nobu in the future. Maybe do one about the light boss and then go back to the fire one, so it is what it is. About the double boss, if you guys want to check out the master one, we will do it in the future. I don't really want to push into master as of yet. I kinda want to set you guys into expert, and then as we did with Aikido, we will go into master. Because I believe it is better if I give you more options for the fight, and then we get into the harder one, which needs 2 heroes and 2 good ones at that, so it is way harder to accomplish, especially now. But for today, my friends, this is it for this Panther sort of Dominion guide slash build showcase that I wanted to do. Hopefully you enjoyed the ride, hopefully you enjoyed the build. Let me know your own Panther build if you use the Dreadking Rathalos one, the Reborn Agni standard attack one, the Godsuden one, whichever you want to use, and let me know in the comments your own feedback for mine. I appreciate it a lot that you always stick around with these videos. They are a little bit on the hard side to make, but they are very enjoyable. I love a lot to experiment with units, especially with creative builds like this one, because it really justifies pulling on some dragons like the Dreadking Rathalos, not a dragon that you use a lot around. So, thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and a sub to support the channel. Remember to tune in on Monday for the next story chapter, very anticipated. Maybe we'll do something in the weekend, we will see. But thank you very much all again. This has been Hunter Lodge together with Ann Takamaki, or Panther if you will. I really love the Persona cast. Glad to have brought you another Dominion guide. I keep saying Aikido showcase, but it's not the same thing. And hopefully you enjoyed your stay. Bye guys, and take care.